What's up, air gunners? Let's talk air tanks. I know it's not a popular subject for this week, but I was going to go out to the range this week. Another guy asked, hey, when are you going to shoot long range? Because I got that video out. Hopefully in the next week, I'm going to get it there and do a part 2, the actual implementation of using street lock and everything, and kind of walk through that. Hopefully you can get out to 200-300 yards with that. But in the meantime, you know, 4th of July threw things off. A lot of people at the range in the weather. Let's talk some air tanks, you know, sizes and that. So if you're new to air gunning, or you probably can remember back, people get enthusiastic about the gun and the caliber that they're going to use versus the realistic aspects of their air usage and the tanks that they're going to have to carry around. More so where they get their fill of the tanks, or do they buy a compressor, and the cost with the tanks and the cost of running it and the cost of the compressor or getting them filled up by someone else. So let's get into that. This, right off the bat, this is a 90 cubic inch tank, probably about $399. 100 cubic inch tank, $470 or something, $450. 74 cubic foot tank, much bigger, $699. And then the 98 cubic foot tank, which is like $799 or $899, depending on the day there. All these fill up to 4,500 PSI. So to give you a rough indication, if we were just to take like an FX Impact or something with the 480cc tank, we're looking at a 250 bar fill at 3,600 PSI. 3,600 PSI. And let's say we run it down to 2,200 PSI. For the big tank, we're going to get 12 fills, about 9 fills, and 3 fills, and let's say 2.2 fills, 2.5 fills, or something like that. With that, taking that into consideration, that is fills that, you know, you get up to 360 at 3,600 PSI. You can go below that and get more shots. Just know that, and that will help with each one, but that's the conservative, you know, fill. If you're going to fill up to the max of the gun, which most people don't, you'll get more fills if you just want to go to, let's say, 3,000 PSI or something like that. But it all kind of deals with the shot count as well. You know, what kind of caliber are you shooting? And what are your expectations, and what is your use case? Because these little tanks have a different use case than these larger tanks, and even so, depends, like if you're shooting big bore, then things really start getting limited, where if you're shooting, you know, 177 or 22 cal, you can kind of get away with these and get some shots. So in comparison, you know, just looking at, let's take the least powerful air gun and a highly tuned air gun. This is the Daystate Red Wolf in, let's say, 19 foot-pounds, or more so, let's say the FX Impact, set down to 12 foot-pounds of energy. Off one fill at 480cc, you can kind of get like 500-600 shots. So if we take into the math of how many fills we can get, let's look this up. We have like 2,680, 2,200 shots. This is 6,500 and 8,500 shots. Now that is a ton of shots, guys, you can get with these little 177. 12 foot-pounds, it's not a lot of energy, but believe it or not, in the UK, they shoot 12 foot-pounds all the time, and they hunt animals out 50, 60. I've seen them taken at 90 yards with 12 foot-pounds. Yeah, it can get done. It can be done. And there's some advantages to the 12 and 15 and 19 foot-pound guns versus, you know, the 20, 30, and the 30 cals and that. So let's walk this up at 19 foot-pounds. Let's say a 22 Red Wolf HP on low. We get about 200 shots per fill. We get 458 total, 570, 1,750, and 2,300 shots. So you can see how this drops down to like almost half of when you're going from a 177 to a 22. You're almost like doubling the foot-pounds of energy, but you're getting like half the shots. And this is where things start getting ridiculous with the shot counts, and you start really losing out on things. So let's say if we go to a 30 cal Daystate Delta Wolf, which you get like 40 shots per fill, we are looking at, let me look this up here, 108, 140, 414, and 550. That is a huge difference between the caliber that you're shooting and your fills. And that's just, yeah, it even starts getting worse. If you want to go up to a 357 Bulldog, which you only get like, you know, 6 shots per fill, and again, You could probably get more because you don't have to shoot at 3,600. You can probably shoot at 2,500 PSI. But just know you're getting like 15 shots, 18 shots, 60 shots, and like 70 to 100 shots or something along that line. So yeah, think about that, 70 to 100 shots. And you're only getting, on these big bores, you're only getting maybe, 15, 25 shots max. So that's the thing. If you're looking at these tanks, what's your use case? And so I'll break it down. For a 22 and .177 or 17 cal, I think these will work for anything. These small tanks, if you can get them filled, which we'll talk about the filling here in a sec, but if you can get them filled, I think you can use them at day at a range. You can shoot and have tons of fun. You might even top off your friend's gun if you're shooting those low foot-pound energy guns and just have a ball at like 1,000 shots. That will last you a day and a couple fills. If you're going to go hunting for these, the use case for these small things, you could probably carry these around if you had a Air Force Texan or 357 and you just want to top off your gun. If you're 22, so the use case for any caliber on the hunt in a backpack will work. It's just your expectations is you're not going to get a lot of shots. That's different than going to the range where you're blowing thousands of rounds off. Now, if you're going to the range to shoot thousands of rounds, I would say 25 cal on up is where you really want to get the bigger tanks and that, because you blow through way more air, obviously, and that's the cost associated with shooting that 25 cal on up to the 357 or 458. There's a lot of huge calibers out there now, and they just blow through air. The problem is getting these tanks filled, which a lot of beginners do not really consider. They're just like, oh, I'll just buy an air tank and start pumping, or I'll go to a store. Like, they see these little air tanks and they think they could go to a sports store and have them fill it. Not such the case. Okay, I've had 4 places that have either gone out of business or refused to fill these tanks. My first place was Canfield Sporting Store. They went out of business, so they couldn't fill any of this. Second sporting store would fill these for a while, then they stopped because they did not want the liability. They're like, oh, this is 4,500 PSI. We don't want our guys messing with this, and they have to make some adjustments. We're not going to do it anymore. So, taking all these tanks, there's a couple dive stores, scuba diving stores, and for a while had one, he would do it, and then he went out of business. So I had another very large scuba place that they were fully rigged out. I brought it into them, and they did it one time, and they had to take off a bunch of gear and do this stuff, and the people that they had running it just weren't very qualified to switch the stuff around. They were pretty much like, put this nozzle to this nozzle and just fill up scuba tanks, regular tanks versus these, and it freaked them out. So they pretty much started refusing to do that as well. So that pushes me to air compressors. But before we get to the air compressors, just know that the cost associated, this is probably like $3 to $9 per fill. This is more like $20 to $30 for a fill, and this was like $35 to $40 per fill for these tanks. So that's the cost. If you can even find someone to fill these big tanks, that's the cost that you're going to have to give in shooting the bigger bores and fill up a lot, because you will go through large tanks. And that kind of leads us to the compressors. Now, obviously the .177, the 22 cal, with a hill pump, a hand pump, it's possible. It's not the funnest experience, but you can hand pump these little tanks, and over the weekend or something, over the week, and then ready for the next weekend, go out to the range and shoot these, and it's pretty doable. I would not suggest a hand pump for these bigger tanks unless, it's kind of like the longer goal is, you pump it up over the week, like every day, maybe 10 minutes. These small hand pumps, these hill pumps get hot, warm, and you can pump them up for a while and then come back, pump them up for a while. And then if you had a small 177 caliber 22 low FPE, it could probably be worth it. You're just going to be pumping a lot, and you'd get a ton of shots. You'd have a ton of shots in the can, so to speak. But if you're shooting 25 cal, on up, 30 cal, 35. No, man, it will just go through way too much air. For me, at least my feeling is to hand pump that. So that gets us into the compressors, which is a whole nother video, but just know, I'll break it down pretty simple. The small compressors, the little hand pump ones, the little guys just aren't made for these. Even the Hill EC 3000, no, it wouldn't. They don't even suggest that, and that's a $1,500 compressor. So you're probably going to have to spend at least $1,500 to pump up these two big tanks, and probably, you know, not much less than that to get a good compressor that's going to pump up that stuff, unless you want a hand pump, and then there's some water issues, getting water in the line that we got to worry about. This whole nother video I'm gonna break out for you guys, but just know that. I hope this helps. You know, smaller cans or smaller tanks, 177, 22 cal, all day shooting, lots of fun, cheaper. Bigger tanks, more expensive, big bore, or a ton of shooting in that, and that's pretty much it. So just think that if you're looking at buying something bigger than a 25 or something bigger than a 22, you're going to be happier with something like this than these. I'm just going to let you know that. Comments, questions, concerns down below, guys, and I will see you next week.